Hey, Strategy Simplified. This is Caleb, the community manager at Management Consulted, and I've got a big announcement. On February 1st, we're launching the MC Community as the first ever go-to community for aspiring consultants. If you're trying to land your next job offer, then you're going to want to be here. You'll meet peers to practice your cases with and get access to multiple events every month, ranging from intensive trainings to hot seats to Q&A sessions with seasoned consultants and recruiters from some of the top firms in the country. Spaces are filling up fast, so click the link in the show notes to learn how to join, and I'll see you inside.
Hey, Strategy Simplified. Really excited to bring you my conversation with Shane Musselman. Shane broke into BCG Dallas as an MBA intern out of Darden, and he's returning there as a full-time consultant. And he really shares his journey and a lot of really fascinating details from that as far as how he navigated case interviews. He has some really amazing insights on that, how he navigated the office selection process, and much more. It's really fascinating. Listen, excited to share it with you. Here you go. Shane Musselman, welcome back to the podcast. Really excited to have you. You are a content intern here at Management Consulted. You've been on the podcast a couple of times before, so you're no stranger to this, and really excited to dig into your story of kind of breaking into BCG and kind of everything around that to kind of extract some insights for people looking to go a similar route. So let me just hand it over to you for a brief intro of your background before we kind of dive into some specific pieces of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I got my undergraduate degree in chemical engineering at the University of Oklahoma. Didn't have an exact path in mind when I was coming out of undergrad, and really found it interesting doing some more implementation-focused consulting, and ended up doing implementation consulting for a software company that was primarily focused in oil and gas. So got to use my chemical engineering degree, but in kind of a non-standard way. I did that for 4 years, got to a point in my career where I wanted to make a bit of a change, decided that change would be to pursue an MBA, and ended up at the UVA Darden School of Business. I'm a second year at Darden now, and I spent my past summer interning at Boston Consulting Group, where I'll be returning in the Dallas office full time after I graduate.
Okay, love it. That's a great recap, and looking forward to getting into more details a little bit. So you spent a couple of years at this kind of software firm before leaving to get your MBA. As far as the MBA, what prompted you to kind of go that route, and kind of what were you kind of hoping to get out of the MBA experience as you were kind of exploring this?
Yeah, I think understanding the dynamics of the software firm that I was at, it was a little bit smaller in size than your Deloitte's, your KPMG's. It was more of like in the 3,000 headcount range, and I'd seen it kind of grow over time. And with that, with it being a little bit smaller, and I had some success early on in my career, I saw a lot of promotions early on and getting a lot of responsibility that was really exciting, but also at times kind of highlighted to me that there were some gaps in my, one, business acumen, and two, managerial skills. And so I think I was, one, looking to kind of broaden my skill set in general. My role was very focused in oil and gas at the time, and I had a chemical engineering degree. So one of the first appeals was just that I wanted to build some sort of business background that would make me a little bit more marketable outside of the oil and gas space. And then the second was kind of filling more of that business acumen and managerial experience through some of the MBA classes to make sure that I wasn't just getting these responsibilities without the ability to actually follow through on them and do it in a way that I believed was effective and really quality. And so I think that was one of the things I really asked about and looked for as I was deciding if the MBA would be the right next step for me to fulfill those gaps that I saw in my, candidate profile per se.
Gotcha. So kind of filling in some skills gaps, broadening your career possibilities. That makes sense. And I think a lot of folks who are considering an MBA or have gotten one can and will relate to your experience. So when you were kind of leaving the software firm, starting the MBA, did you see yourself going back into some sort of consulting role, or was that something that kind of came out of the blue for you, and if there's any kind of light bulb moment or realization there, we'd love to hear a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I definitely think even making that decision was a little bit of a journey. Anybody that's gone through the MBA process and the application process can probably relate that there's a lot of introspection done throughout the application process. I think a lot of these schools do a great job of asking you really pointed questions that kind of make you think through what your actual goals are with getting the MBA and where exactly you plan to use those. And so I spent a lot of that year before the MBA thinking through some of those questions, iterating through my answers, and really like having to, in order to do that, having to think through, what are my motivations here? Where do I see myself going? And I didn't want to pin it down to a single thing, but I really got to the point of I could see myself doing strategy consulting or going to more of like a product management role in tech, having some technical skills beforehand. I think I was slightly leaning consulting, but hadn't really made the decision yet. And the light bulb moment is gonna seem kind of small, and it's actually kind of anecdotal. It's funny. I was on a Darden Tech Club call, thinking like, okay, I'm gonna kind of split this 50-50 with tech. And they had a consultant who had graduated from Darden and was at BCG Dallas, just so happened to be in a BCG Gamma role, which is more of their data science and technical team. And just kind of listening to the type of work and the type of diversity that he got to have on his cases and what he was working with, I was like, this is where I can grow the most, even in my technical skills in a short amount of time, to kind of fill those gaps that I want, really be tested in a way that I wouldn't get maybe in just like a product management role, from like diversity of industries, diversity of clients, all those different business models. And the way he talked about it just really, really sold it for me. It's very interesting now, like seeing him around the office in the summer when we were working together. It's kind of crazy to think that I don't think he knows my name, but he had that kind of impact on my journey. And so kind of a weird way to align to consulting, but that was really the moment when I was ready to press forward with consulting, with tech very much being more of a backup.
That's awesome. I think highlighting that moment really gives a lot of color to your story, and it's really helpful to kind of see what that was. So thank you for sharing. So, you press on, you go, okay, let's go for consulting, and of course, you eventually landed a coveted BCG internship the summer after your first year. Can you just kind of share some of that journey through landing that internship offer? If you can just share a high level overview, I might double click into a few pieces afterwards. But that's a good place to start, I think.
Yeah, it started pretty early on in the Darden process, even before I got to school. They offer some summer programs where you get to know the firms a little bit and to have some office specific events. And so I was just kind of doing that for all of the MBB firms, at least for McKinsey Bain and BCG. Followed those through for the Dallas office for the most part, knowing that was generally where I was thinking I would end up afterwards. And, the first thing was just kind of getting to know the office, making sure that I understood kind of what type of work they did, what the head count was like, making sure it was really kind of a place that I saw as a fit to put the time into and to pursue. BCG is a pretty big office in Dallas, and so that made it attractive to me. I wanted to have the opportunity to work on a bunch of different teams and to work with a lot of different types of managers, and so having that flexibility to move around between teams was definitely something that I was interested in. Once I kind of determined that fit and finally got on grounds at UVA, I was really interested, making more connections with the Darden alums that were at BCG, especially in the Dallas office. And so networking hit the ground running pretty quickly when we got here. I made some connections with the recruiting team on the MBA side early on, and really felt like across different recruiting teams, BCG Dallas was the one where I just had to put the least effort in a good way. Like I just didn't really feel like I had to, be super buttoned up or, feel like I was really trying to impress anyone. It was just very conversational and very relaxed. But at the same time was really they spoke a lot to the work that they were doing, and it seemed very interesting to me. So after the networking stage, moving into more of the casing side of things, as the conversations start to slow down, I got my interview invite at a couple different firms, started prioritizing casing. During that process, a lot of that was done more through the MBA, with a lot of BCG and other firm representatives supporting us throughout the process. I probably did somewhere in the range of like 50 to 60 practice cases, just prepping for that, as well as prepping behaviorals. And that was kind of probably a 2-month total process, with 5 weeks of really, really hunkered down casing. And then, the interview process, they're doing their decision rounds a little differently than they have in years past. And so it was just 2 back-to-back case interviews with a short behavioral at the beginning. I was actually very sick for my interviews, which was not very fun, but luckily my interviewers were very, very nice about that. And I just kind of pushed through it and made it work, even though I was a little bit low energy throughout the case. So I'm happy they were nice about that. So, and then I heard back pretty quickly. I think it was within the week, and accepted the offer pretty quickly after. That was the only interview I actually ended up following through with, because I wanted to make sure, they were my top firm all along, and I wanted to make sure that other people kind of had the opportunity to fill other spots elsewhere.
That's awesome. Shane, that's a really comprehensive overview, and I'd love to dig into a few of those pieces. So, as far as the case interviews, you obviously kind of took your time. You thought to strategically kind of knew that you had to really dedicate a bunch of time and practice to this. Is there anything that you looking back on your process that you would say kind of gave you an edge, or gave you, just a little something extra, kind of that maybe some people miss or kind of neglect in their prep process?
I don't know if there's like a specific thing that I can identify. I think what comes to mind for me was that I tried to be really diverse in the people that I cased with. And so, yes, it was important to have them case me and experience different case styles from the interviewer, but it was also really cool to be the interviewer for a lot of my other first year classmates that were also super impressive and were trying to build up their style of casing, and try to understand, how do we differ? Are there things about their casing style that I really like, and that maybe I could integrate into my casing style and try to use to be a little bit more impressive and to build up some of these skills? And so I think over time I saw, the strategy I was using on case 10, or the way that I would go through maybe like a framework or think about my brainstorming, had really evolved by case 40. And it wasn't just from, I don't think it would have changed in quite the same way if I had just constantly repped out my exact same thoughts. So, using resources to see different types of cases and how people handle those cases can be really important if you're able to kind of make your process a little bit more malleable and change as you see interesting ways of handling different parts of the case.
Okay, love that. It really important to have a diversity of folks you case with, and also give cases as well. That's awesome. What was your maybe top 1 or 2 kind of resources as far as case interviews goes?
Yeah, for case interviews, outside of just the like having other first years to case with, I think the thing that I relied on a lot was just walking through different MBA programs casebooks that were kind of like either old or stuff that I would normally not see, and just going through every case that's in there, and like piece by piece, even if I didn't write it down or do like a 2-minute framework drill, I would just make sure, once I had kind of gotten a little bit further along in my casing journey, that I understood how I would handle each of these cases, and really tried to pick out ones that were not something I had seen before, to make sure that I had some sort of experience either doing a framework in an odd industry, or doing a brainstorm in something that was a little different, or trying to parse through a really tough exhibit that isn't something I'd seen before. The management consultant case library obviously has a ton of resources for things like that. So if you don't have, access to case books. I think that library is great. And then the other thing for me, my one thing that I struggled with was kind of bucketing and structuring my brainstorms. At first, it was just kind of, oh, I think I have some interesting ideas, but it was really just me spewing out whatever came to mind. There was no structure to it. There was no thought process behind it. So really making myself, before I dove into that, try to find the 2 or 3 most important buckets of different types of brainstorm elements that I wanted to bring in, and then go down each of those with specific ideas. I thought that, looking at specific brainstorming prompts within cases or within a brainstorming drill was really helpful for me to really hone in on that one specific area of the casing that I thought I needed the most work.
That's awesome. So you kind of identified what one of your weaknesses was, and then you really focused and drilled down on that, which very much aligns with how our team of coaches work with candidates as well. Love that.
Even to do that, I think you have to be able to go through the casing process for a while and really determine what your weaknesses are. I don't think that my weakness, there were some weaknesses that just stick around even when you've done a lot of reps. But if you're still really fresh in the journey, it can seem like a lot of things are weaknesses, and that's more of just figuring out how to case. So don't be freaked out if it seems like there's a lot of stuff going on early. I would say get to, whatever amount of cases you feel comfortable with, where you're like, okay, I generally feel how this is going, and maybe there's some small areas that I need to focus on, but those will continue to stand out over time versus things that go away as you just get a feel for how casing goes.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Have you ever heard a new digital trend and thought to yourself, okay, does this really matter? Asking the right questions helps you cut through the noise and get down to what matters most. I'm Jim Hertzfeld, host of the What If, So What podcast, where we discover what's possible with digital and figure out how to make it real by asking what if, so what, and most importantly, now what? Subscribe and listen, and together we can turn big ideas into tangible actions so you can get shit done.
That's really, really helpful. Appreciate you, and I know our listeners will glean a lot from that experience as well. Zooming out and going a little bit backwards in your process to how you selected BCG Dallas. So we get a lot of questions about kind of office selection. How do you choose the right office? And there's a lot of politicking or kind of mental gymnastics that people do for this. And I heard a couple of things, kind of factors or criteria. You mentioned kind of the size of the office was attractive to you. Culture fit was just kind of really easy. Conversation was easy. Are there maybe 1 or 2 other kind of factors that you would really recommend people consider, or kind of mistakes that you see people make in this process?
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of exposure to this. I considered the Atlanta office for a couple of different areas because it just mimics Dallas in a lot of those aspects, with bigger offices generally, but still a southern kind of city that is what I'm a little bit more used to. I lived in Dallas before coming to the MBA program, so those were really the main factors that I considered. I was pretty set on coming back to Dallas one way or another, and that was honestly part of the reason I chose Darden, because there is a great network of people from Darden and Dallas, which honestly was surprising to me at first. I think the mistake that I saw people make that were making this decision was trying to game the system in a way that was very not genuine. And I think it just comes out really easily if you're comparing a candidate that has lived in New York, worked in New York, family or something is from New York, and then they're like, oh yeah, but I really want to go to the Dallas office. That might stand out as someone that's trying to game the system. Maybe not so much with Dallas, but with some of the smaller offices where they're really more interested in finding people that are going to stick there and stay there for the long term. So I actually think you could really be hurting your chances overall, because if they don't see that you have a genuine connection to that city and something that's going to make you stay there, they're not going to want you there as a candidate. The office itself kind of operates on its own to an extent in a lot of these companies. And so especially for MBB, they really want you to be committed to that office that you're going to, and they are looking for that throughout the interview process. So I would say don't try to figure out the numbers of interview offers and, overall internship offers. go to the place where you want to be, and it'll work out.
Love that, Shane. Don't try to game the system. We're actually recording a podcast on this topic soon. It'll release in spring 2024 sometime. So if you're listening and you want more insights, go find that episode. Okay. Wonderful. Well, is there any kind of, as far as recruiting process, when we're talking about networking or resumes or case interviews, anything you kind of would want to kind of leave our audience with as far as what to do, what to avoid, etc.?
Yeah, I think a couple things on those areas. In the networking process, I think the most beneficial thing that I had was just kind of someone that had been through the process to soundboard off of, and especially someone that wasn't even from my office. That's kind of unique to the MBA experience, but I feel like there are probably some other ways that you can connect with people that you align with. That I kind of found that in two people, one being a second year at Darden last year, who was just kind of kept me sane throughout the process as I was like going crazy because somebody didn't respond to an email, or overthinking like the last comment that I made in one of those huge networking circles. His name was Alex. He did just a great job of like calming me down, kind of recentering me on like the goal at hand, and realizing that like those little things aren't as important as just the general process and making sure that you're putting your best foot forward. And then the other one, I found an OU alum who was a big OKC Thunder fan, as I am as well, and we just connected over that, and then kind of it rolled into us being able to talk about BCG, and kind of ask him some more candid questions that I didn't feel like I could ask people from BCG Dallas specifically, because it just feels a little strange when you're actually recruiting there. On the casing side of things, I would just say, I think we talked about it a little bit, but, be adaptable. It's going to change over time. Like, don't hold on to your specific strategy that you put forward within the first like 10 cases for the entire time. I, at one point, had so many zeros on my page after like a long math session that I just had to change my strategy for math, or I knew I wasn't going to be able to handle it. It was train wreck of a case, and so I needed to make some sort of change, and I changed my strategy for math, and I think it very greatly affected my performance later on, which was great. And then last thing for the interview on the day of, I think it's something you need to practice in the cases as well, but kind of towing a line of both being professional but also showing that you're someone that the partner MDP would like to staff on their team. And these people are going to be traveling with you. You've probably heard about like the airport test, or stuff like that, where they're trying to kind of determine if you're someone they would want to spend that number of hours with. And so don't be afraid to let your personal interests out a little bit, and make sure that you're relating in a way that's not just giving and taking a case. It should be a little bit more of a back and forth than that, so you can show that you're somebody that they want to work with, but also don't get too casual that you aren't really you aren't showing that same level of professionalism that they would expect when you were working with a client in consulting.
Love it, Shane. What a wealth of wisdom and insight you have. Really appreciate you sharing that with us today. Grateful for that. Well, one final question before we get to the kind of fun segment of the episode here. But you're starting at BCG full time pretty soon. What are you most looking forward to?
I think this is kind of a cop-out answer, but I think I really am interested in the work. The stuff we got to do over this summer was so like interesting and cutting edge. I got to spend a little bit more time at oil and gas, and working on tech strategy, and it was just so like strategic and forward thinking. I thought it was really interesting, and so I'm excited to get to continue to work on those things. Maybe the more fun answer is just the team dynamics. It's kind of a cool bonding process. I spent the entire summer on the road down in Houston, and really like got very close with the people on my team. It's cool. It's crazy to go from having those bonds with people where you're seeing each other every day, having dinner every night, to, not seeing them now that I'm back at Darden. So I tried to stay really close with the team that I was with over the summer, keep up with how they're doing on their cases now that they move forward. And so I'm excited to, continue to build those bonds, and just the people I've met, specifically in the BCG Dallas office, are just awesome. And I'm excited to continue to get to know them.
Yeah, we're excited for you as well. Great. All right. Final segment. A couple of rapid fire personal questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. You mentioned you're a sports fan. You mentioned the OKC Thunder. Do you have I don't know, you're a big OU fan as well. Do you have a favorite kind of sports moment, memory, or experience?
Yeah, I'm also, the final team is the Kansas City Chiefs. I've been a lifelong Chiefs fan. I got to go to the Texans Chiefs game. I believe it was 2017 or 2018 playoff game, and we were down 21. It was 21 or 24-0 in the second quarter, and came back to win. It was a very cold and sad first quarter, and then turned into like one of the best sporting events I've been to. I also got to go to OU Georgia in the Rose Bowl back in the day, which was a very exciting game, even though we ended up losing. But it was a super cool environment. The Rose Bowl is kind of unlike anything else. So those are definitely the two that come to mind.
Man, that's pretty epic. I love that. All right. I heard that you are a president of the Outdoors Club at Darden. Do you have kind of a favorite memory or experience from your time there?
Yeah, absolutely. There was we do an event at the beginning of every year, the first year camping trip for Darden. It's really like one of the first opportunities outside of the classroom walls where people get to meet each other before the first week of class. And it's just like a really fun opportunity to watch all of the bonds be made and these friendships kind of start to bloom while you're just sitting there as a second year, kind of getting to know them, but also excited about facilitating things. And so I think that's been the highlight for me so far. Just we had a record number of attendance, broke the previous number by about 50%. Had a lot of international students come as well, which I can't imagine like being an international student moving to a new country and then somebody telling you to come camp in a place you've never heard of for 2 nights. So I applaud them for being flexible and trusting us with their weekend. But it was just a really cool experience, and I was excited to get to facilitate that, and just to see my team work in that as well was super cool.
And that's awesome. I love camping as well. All right. Last question. What's the next place on your travel bucket list?
So I'm a big snowboarder as well. Zermatt, Switzerland has been a place that I've really wanted to snowboard for a while. Been very interested in getting to the Alps. My roommate is actually about to go over to Switzerland to do a study exchange for the third quarter. And so we're currently in the process of looking at flights to get out there in February. So I'm hoping that's top of the list right now, and I'm hoping we can get it checked off pretty soon.
That's epic. Yeah, hope you can get that checked off. Switzerland is magical. All right, Shane, thank you for joining Strategy Simplified once more. Really appreciate your insights, you sharing your journey, and please do keep in touch. Look forward to hearing how your time at BCG goes.
Sounds great, David. I appreciate you for having me on.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode with Shane. If you are enjoying the podcast, we'd love your rating, your review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Both will allow you to leave a rating. Apple will allow you to leave a review. Those are especially helpful for helping us rank on these kind of top podcast lists and reaching more people through the algorithm. Really appreciate your review in advance. All right. Thank you as always, and we will catch you again on another episode of Strategy Simplified before long. Cheers.